The gunshot echoed across the Montana landscape as Owen Parker's weathered hands trembled, his rifle still warm from the bullet that had just taken down a buck for tonight's dinner. It was May 1878, and the setting sun cast long shadows across the rolling grasslands of the territory that surrounded his modest ranch. 2 years had passed since his wife Rebecca had died during childbirth, leaving him alone with 2 boys to raise 8-year-old Samuel and 2-year-old Michael in this unforgiving frontier. Owen lowered his rifle, the weight of it nothing compared to the burden he carried in his heart. He whistled for his horse, a sturdy chestnut gelding named Rusty, who trotted over obediently. Securing the deer across Rusty's back, Owen mounted up and headed home. The sight of his small ranch house appearing on the horizon brought both relief and dread. Relief to be home, dread for the chaos that likely awaited him inside. "Samuel, Michael," Owen called out as he dismounted. The front door burst open and Samuel ran out, his face streaked with dirt, his clothes disheveled. "Pa, you're back," Samuel shouted, excitement in his voice. Michael got into the flour again, and I tried to stop him, but Owen sighed, closing his eyes briefly. "Where is he now?" "Under the table. He won't come out." Owen tied Rusty to the hitching post and carried the deer to the shed where he'd dress it later. First, he needed to deal with his youngest son. Inside the cabin, a disaster awaited. Flour covered nearly every surface of their small kitchen. Tiny handprints marked the walls, the table, the chairs. And beneath the table sat Michael, his blonde hair white with flour, his big blue eyes Rebecca's eyes peeking out from a powdered face. "Michael," Owen said, his voice straining for patience. "Come out from there, son." The little boy shook his head stubbornly. "No." Owen knelt down, ignoring the flour that clung to his denims. "Michael, please, Pa is tired." "Want Mama," Michael said, the words stabbing into Owen's heart like a knife. Samuel shifted uncomfortably behind his father. "I told him Mama's in heaven, Pa, but he doesn't understand." Owen reached under the table and pulled his resistant son out. Michael immediately began to wail, his small fists pounding against Owen's chest. Owen held him anyway, letting the boy's grief and anger wash over him, even as he struggled to contain his own. Later that night, after both boys were finally asleep, Owen sat alone on his porch, a bottle of whiskey his only company. The vast Montana sky sparkled with stars, indifferent to his struggles. He took another swig, welcoming the burn down his throat. "I can't do this, Becca," he whispered to the night. "I don't know how to be both mother and father to them." The wind offered no answers, just a gentle rustling of the aspen leaves nearby. Owen eventually staggered inside, collapsing fully clothed onto his bed, his dreams haunted by Rebecca's face and the sound of Michael crying for a mother he would never know. Morning came too soon, the sun streaming through the curtainless windows. Owen woke with a pounding headache and the realization that he'd overslept. The boys were already up, he could hear them moving around the main room. Groaning, he pushed himself up and splashed water on his face from the basin. When he emerged from his bedroom, he found Samuel attempting to feed Michael, who was smearing porridge across his face rather than eating it. "Pa," Samuel looked relieved. "I made breakfast." Owen nodded, pride mixing with shame. His 8-year-old son shouldn't have to take on such responsibilities. "Thank you, Samuel. That was good of you." The day proceeded like most others. Owen tended to the small herd of cattle he maintained, repaired a section of fence that had been damaged in the last storm, and tried to keep Michael from hurting himself as the toddler explored the world with reckless abandon. Samuel helped as much as a boy his age could, but Owen could see the childhood slipping away from his eldest, replaced by premature responsibility. That evening, as Owen attempted to prepare a stew from the deer meat, a knock came at the door. Visitors were rare this far out, and Owen instinctively reached for his rifle before approaching the door. "Who's there?" he called. "Name's Julie Bennett," came a woman's voice. "My wagon broke an axle about a mile back, spotted your chimney smoke." Owen hesitated, then opened the door. Standing on his porch was a woman in her mid-20s, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical braid, wearing a travel-worn dress and sturdy boots. She had a satchel over her shoulder and determination in her hazel eyes. "I'm sorry to intrude," she said, her voice softer now. "But I was hoping I might trouble you for some assistance, or at least directions to the nearest town." Owen stared at her, momentarily forgetting his manners. It had been so long since he'd spoken to a woman, especially one as striking as Julie Bennett. "Pa, who is it?" Samuel appeared at his side, curious. Julie smiled at the boy. "Hello there, I'm Julie." "I'm Samuel Parker. That's my pa, Owen, and my little brother Michael is inside." Owen finally found his voice. "Miss Bennett, Silver Creek is about 15 miles east, but you won't make it before dark." "You're welcome to. Stay here tonight." The offer came out awkwardly, and he hurried to add, "You can have my room, I'll sleep in the barn." Julie's relief was evident. "Thank you, Mr. Parker, I won't be any trouble, I promise." Owen nodded, stepping aside to let her in. As she passed him, he caught the scent of lavender, so unexpected in this rugged land that it nearly took his breath away. Inside, Michael had managed to climb onto the table and was playing with the salt cellar. When Julie entered, he froze, his eyes wide with curiosity. "Hello, little one," Julie said gently. To Owen's astonishment, Michael didn't shy away as he usually did with strangers. Instead, he stared at Julie for a long moment before saying clearly, "Pretty." Julie laughed, the sound like water over stones in a creek. "Well, thank you, young man. That's the nicest thing anyone's said to me in quite some time." Owen lifted Michael off the table. "Sorry about the mess," he said, suddenly acutely aware of the state of his home clothes waiting to be washed, dishes piled in the basin, toys scattered across the floor. Julie waved away his apology. "Mr. Parker, I've been traveling for weeks. This looks like paradise compared to some of the places I've stayed." "You can call me Owen," he said, finding himself wanting to hear her say his name. "Owen," she repeated, and something in her tone made his heart beat a little faster. "And you must call me Julie." Over a simple dinner of venison stew and biscuits that Julie helped improve with a few herbs from her satchel, she explained her situation. "I'm heading to Oregon," she said. "My uncle has a mercantile there, and he's offered me a position. I lost my parents last year to influenza, and there wasn't much left for me in Missouri." "You're traveling alone?" Owen couldn't hide his surprise. Julie's chin lifted slightly. "I am. I've always been capable of taking care of myself, Mr. Parker Owen, though I admit a broken wagon axle was not part of my plan." "I can help you with that," Owen offered. "I've got tools and some wood that might work. We can ride out tomorrow and take a look." "I'd be grateful," Julie said, then turned her attention to Michael, who was struggling with his spoon. Without a word, she gently took the utensil and showed him how to hold it properly. To Owen's amazement, Michael copied her actions perfectly, beaming with pride when he successfully delivered a spoonful of stew to his mouth. "You're good with children," Owen observed. Julie's smile held a touch of sadness. "I taught school back home. I miss it sometimes." After dinner, Julie insisted on helping with the dishes while Owen put Michael to bed. When he returned to the main room, he found her sitting with Samuel, who was showing her a carved wooden horse Owen had made for him. "Your pa is quite talented," Julie said, examining the carving. "He made one for Michael too, but he broke it," Samuel explained. "Pa said he'd make another, but he hasn't had time." Owen felt the familiar pang of guilt, another promise he hadn't kept. "I'm sure your pa has been very busy," Julie said diplomatically. She looked up at Owen, and he felt as though she could see right through him, all his failures, all his struggles. "It's past your bedtime, Samuel," Owen said, perhaps more gruffly than intended. After Samuel reluctantly went to bed, an awkward silence fell between Owen and Julie. She stood by the fireplace, the flames casting a golden glow on her features. "Thank you for your hospitality," she said. "I know it can't be easy, suddenly having a stranger in your home." "It's no trouble," Owen replied, though in truth, her presence had disturbed the careful routine he'd established. "I'll show you to your room." He led her to his bedroom, acutely aware of how Spartan it was: just a bed, a chest of drawers, and a small table with a lantern. "It's not much," he apologized. "It's perfect," Julie assured him. "But I can't take your bed, the sofa would be fine for me." "I insist," Owen said firmly. "I'll be comfortable enough in the barn. I've slept in worse places." Their eyes met, and for a moment, Owen felt a connection he hadn't experienced in years. Then he quickly looked away. "Good night, Miss Bennett, Julie." Good night, Owen, she replied softly. As he made his way to the barn, Owen tried to ignore the strange fluttering in his chest. Julie Bennett was just passing through. Tomorrow, he'd fix her wagon and she'd be on her way to Oregon, out of their lives forever. It was better that way. He had no room in his life for complications, especially not in the form of a beautiful, independent woman with kind eyes and a gentle way with his sons. Yet as he lay on a makeshift bed of hay, Owen found himself wondering what it might be like if she stayed. Morning arrived with the crowing of the rooster. Owen woke earlier than usual, determined to make a better impression today. He washed at the pump outside, combed his hair, and even trimmed his beard before heading to the house. To his surprise, he found Julie already up, cooking breakfast. Michael sat on her hip as she flipped pancakes with her free hand, and Samuel was setting the table. "Good morning," she said brightly when she saw him. "I hope you don't mind. I found flour and some dried berries and thought pancakes might be a nice change." "No, I don't mind," Owen stammered, thrown off balance by the domestic scene before him. For a moment, he could almost pretend they were a normal family, a husband, a wife, 2 sons sharing breakfast on a sunny morning. "Miss Julie makes the best pancakes, Pa," Samuel exclaimed. "Even better than," he stopped abruptly, a shadow crossing his face. "Even better than mine, I'm sure," Owen finished for him, knowing Samuel had been about to say better than Mama's. He forced a smile. "I burn them more often than not." Julie set Michael down in his chair, where he immediately began banging a spoon on the table. With a gentle touch, she stilled his hand. "Let's save that energy for after breakfast, shall we?" They ate together, and Owen couldn't remember when he'd last enjoyed a meal so much. Julie told stories about her journey from Missouri, making Samuel laugh with tales of a particularly stubborn mule she'd encountered, and a group of prairie dogs that had invaded her campsite one night. "After breakfast, I'll ride out with you to look at your wagon," Owen said as they finished eating. "I'd like to come too, Pa," Samuel pleaded. Owen hesitated. Someone needed to watch Michael, and he wasn't sure about leaving his youngest with Julie, though she seemed capable enough. As if reading his thoughts, Julie said, "Michael and I will be fine here. We might do some baking, mightn't we, Michael?" She tickled the boy under his chin, eliciting a giggle. "Are you sure?" Owen asked. Julie nodded. "Absolutely." "You two go on, and we'll have something special waiting when you return." Owen and Samuel rode out shortly after, following Julie's directions to where she'd left her wagon. Sure enough, they found it about a mile away, the front axle cracked and one wheel listing badly. "Can you fix it, Pa?" Samuel asked, watching as Owen examined the damage. "I can," Owen said, though he knew it would take more than a simple repair. The axle would need to be completely replaced. "But we'll need to bring it back to the ranch. I've got a spare axle from an old wagon that might work." They attached a rope to the wagon's tongue and carefully towed it back to the ranch, where Owen had a small workshop set up in a lean-to attached to the barn. The work would take the better part of the day, he realized. When they returned, the house smelled of fresh bread and something sweet. Inside, they found Julie teaching Michael how to roll out dough, the little boy's face serious with concentration as his flour-covered hands pressed down on the rolling pin. "We're making apple tarts," Julie announced, looking up with a smile that made Owen's heart skip. Her hair had come loose from its braid, and a streak of flour marked her cheek. He had never seen anything more beautiful. "The wagon needs a new axle," Owen said, forcing himself to focus. "It'll take time to fix." "I suspected as much," Julie replied, her expression unreadable. "I suppose I'll be imposing on your hospitality a bit longer." "You're not imposing," Owen said quickly. "We're happy to have you." The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise Julie, but they were true, he realized. In just one day, she had brought warmth and light into their home that had been missing for too long. The next few days fell into an easy rhythm. Owen worked on the wagon between his regular ranch chores, while Julie took charge of the household. She washed the accumulated laundry, cleaned the cabin until it shone, and prepared meals that made Owen realize how poorly he and the boys had been eating. More remarkably, she connected with the boys in a way Owen hadn't managed in the 2 years since Rebecca's death. She taught Samuel to read better using some books she carried in her satchel, and she somehow convinced Michael to sit still for stories, something Owen had never accomplished. On the third evening, after the boys were asleep, Owen found Julie sitting on the porch, gazing at the stars. "May I join you?" he asked. She smiled and moved over on the bench. "It's your porch." Owen sat beside her, aware of the small space between them. "The wagon axle is almost ready," he said. "Should be able to finish it tomorrow." "That's good news," Julie said, though her tone suggested otherwise. They sat in silence for a moment, the night sounds of the prairie surrounding them. "Your boys are wonderful, Owen," Julie finally said. "You've done well with them, considering." "Considering I'm just a man trying to do a woman's job too," he said with a bitter laugh. Julie turned to face him. "That's not what I meant. I meant considering the grief you've all been through, losing a wife, a mother. It leaves scars." Owen stared out at the darkness. "Sometimes I think I'm failing them. Samuel shouldn't have to be so responsible at his age, and Michael. He barely remembers Rebecca, but he knows something's missing." "Children are resilient," Julie said gently, "and they adore you. That's clear in everything they do." "They seem to adore you too," Owen observed. "Michael hasn't taken to anyone like he has to you, not since." "I'm glad," Julie said softly. "They're easy to love." The word hung in the air between them. Love. Owen hadn't allowed himself to think about love, not romantic love, anyway since Rebecca died. But sitting here with Julie, beneath the vast Montana sky, he felt something stirring that he'd thought was dead forever. "Tell me about her," Julie said quietly. "About Rebecca." Owen was silent for so long that Julie must have thought he wouldn't answer. But then the words came, hesitantly at first, then flowing more freely. "She was strong. Stubborn, too. Had to be, to agree to marry a man like me and move out here where there's nothing but hard work and solitude. She loved to sing. Couldn't carry a tune to save her life, but that never stopped her." He smiled at the memory. "She'd sing to the boys, to the chickens, even to the bread dough as she needed it." Julie listened, her face soft in the moonlight. "The pregnancy with Michael was difficult from the start," Owen continued, his voice dropping. "The doctor in town warned us against it, but Rebecca wanted another child so badly. She said Samuel needed a brother or sister." He swallowed hard. "She hemorrhaged during the birth. There was nothing anyone could do." "I'm so sorry, Owen," Julie said, reaching out to touch his hand. The contact sent warmth spreading up his arm. "We were happy," he said simply. "I never thought I'd find that kind of happiness again." Their eyes met, and Owen felt a pull toward her that was almost physical. For a moment he thought he might lean in, might try to kiss her. But then he stood abruptly. "It's getting late," he said, "and I've got an early start tomorrow." Julie nodded, something like disappointment flickering across her face. "Good night, Owen." As he settled into his makeshift bed in the barn again, Owen cursed himself for a fool. Julie Bennett was leaving tomorrow or the next day. She had plans, a future in Oregon. And he had a ranch to run and 2 boys to raise. There was no place in his life for romantic notions. Yet, he couldn't stop thinking about the feel of her hand on his, the way her eyes had held his in the moonlight, and the possibility, just the possibility, that she might feel something for him too. The next day, Owen finished repairing the wagon axle. It was solid work, and he felt a mix of pride and regret as he fitted it into place. Pride in a job well done, regret that it meant Julie would be leaving. He was tightening the last bolt when Samuel appeared, his young face troubled. "Is Miss Julie really leaving tomorrow, Pa?" he asked. Owen nodded. "She has to get to Oregon, son. Her uncle is expecting her." "But couldn't she stay, just for a little while longer?" Samuel kicked at the dirt. "Michael keeps asking for her when she's not in the room." "And she makes you smile, Pa. You don't smile much anymore." Owen set down his wrench, unsure how to respond to his son's observation. "It's not that simple, Samuel." "Why not?" Samuel persisted. "Don't you like her?" "I do like her," Owen admitted. "But Miss Julie has her own life, her own plans. We can't ask her to change them for us." Samuel looked unconvinced but didn't argue further. He helped Owen finish with the wagon, then ran off to find his brother. That evening, Julie prepared a special dinner to thank them for their hospitality. She had somehow managed to bake a pie with berries Samuel had gathered, and the main course was a savory stew that made even Michael ask for seconds. After dinner, as Julie was teaching Samuel a card game, a knock came at the door. Owen answered it to find Tom Billings, a neighbor from several miles away. "Evening, Owen," Tom said, his face grave. "Sorry to disturb you, but there's trouble. Mountain lions took down 2 of my calves last night, and Jim Harper lost 1 too. We're organizing a hunting party to track them." "Could use your rifle." Owen hesitated, glancing back at Julie and the boys. "When? First light tomorrow, meeting at my place." Owen nodded. "I'll be there." After Tom left, Owen explained the situation to Julie. "I'll need to go with them," he said. "Mountain lions are a threat to everyone's livestock." "Of course," Julie said. "The boys and I will be fine for a day." "It might be more than a day," Owen admitted. "Tracking mountain lions isn't easy, and if we don't get them all." Julie's face showed no concern. "We'll manage, Owen. Don't worry about us." Later, as Owen prepared his gear for the hunt, Julie found him in the barn. "The boys are asleep," she said, holding a lantern that cast golden light on her features. "Samuel made me promise to tell you good night." "Thank you," Owen said, checking his rifle one last time. "And thank you for staying with them. I wouldn't go if it wasn't important." "I understand," Julie said. She hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking. Perhaps I could delay my departure until you return. It doesn't seem right to leave the boys alone, and my uncle isn't expecting me on any particular day." Relief washed over Owen, followed quickly by guilt. He shouldn't want her to stay. He shouldn't be glad for an excuse to keep her here longer. "Are you sure? I don't want to delay your journey." "I'm sure," Julie said, and something in her voice made Owen look up sharply. Their eyes met across the lantern light, and this time, Owen didn't look away. "Julie," he began, not sure what he was going to say. She stepped closer. "Yes," words failed him. Instead, he reached out and gently wiped away a smudge of flour that still marked her cheek from baking the pie. His hand lingered, and Julie leaned slightly into his touch. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then, from the house, came the sound of Michael crying. The spell broken, Julie stepped back. "I should go to him," she said, her voice slightly breathless. Owen nodded, his hand falling back to his side. "Good night, Julie." "Be safe tomorrow, Owen," she said softly. And then she was gone, taking the lantern light with her and leaving Owen alone in the darkness of the barn with his tangled thoughts. Dawn came early, and Owen rode out to join the hunting party with mixed emotions. Part of him was anxious to be away from the confusing feelings Julie stirred in him, while another part dreaded leaving her and the boys, even for a short time. The hunt proved more difficult than anticipated. The mountain lions, a female, and 2 nearly grown cubs led them on a chase deep into the foothills. By the time they had tracked and killed all 3 predators, 2 days had passed. Exhausted, Owen rode home in the fading light of the second day, his body aching from hours in the saddle and sleeping on hard ground. As he approached the ranch, he saw smoke rising from the chimney and lights glowing in the windows. The sight filled him with a longing so intense it was almost painful. He dismounted wearily and had barely reached the porch when the door flew open and Samuel burst out. "Pa, you're back," his son cried, flinging himself into Owen's arms. Owen hugged him tightly. "I told you I would be." Inside, he found Julie at the stove, Michael clinging to her skirts. The little boy spotted Owen and ran to him, arms outstretched. "Pa, Pa," Owen scooped him up, inhaling the clean scent of his hair. "Hello, little man, were you good for Miss Julie?" Michael nodded solemnly, then squirmed to be put down so he could return to Julie's side. "Welcome home," Julie said, her smile warming Owen more than the fire in the hearth. "Dinner's almost ready." "You didn't have to cook," Owen protested, though the smell of food made his stomach growl. "It's the least I could do," Julie replied. "Besides, Samuel helped. He's quite the talented assistant." Samuel beamed at the praise. "I chopped the carrots all by myself, Pa." After a hearty meal and stories of the mountain lion hunt, carefully edited for young ears, Owen helped Julie with the dishes while the boys played quietly in the corner. "They were no trouble," Julie said when Owen thanked her again for watching them. "In fact, I've enjoyed every minute." Owen glanced at her profile as she dried a plate. "You're good with them, natural, like you've been doing it all your life." Julie's hands stilled. "I always wanted children," she said softly, "but it wasn't meant to be, I suppose." "Why not?" Owen asked before he could stop himself. Julie set the plate down carefully. I was engaged once, back in Missouri. Thomas was his name. He died in a logging accident 3 years ago, just a month before our wedding. I'm sorry, Owen said, understanding now the shadow of sadness he sometimes glimpsed in her eyes. Life goes on, Julie said with a small shrug. After my parents died last year, there didn't seem to be any reason to stay in a place filled with memories, so when my uncle offered me the position in his store, "Do you have other family in Oregon?" Owen asked, realizing how little he knew about her plans. "Just Uncle William," Julie said. "He's my mother's brother. I haven't seen him since I was a child, but we've corresponded regularly." Owen nodded, absorbing this information. Julie had no one waiting for her, no urgent reason to reach Oregon except for an uncle she barely knew. The thought gave him a dangerous hope. After the boys were in bed, Owen and Julie found themselves once again on the porch, beneath a sky brilliant with stars. "I should leave tomorrow," Julie said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "The wagon is fixed and you're home safely." Owen felt his heart sink. "Yes, I suppose you should," he said, the words tasting bitter. Julie turned to him, her face pale in the moonlight. Unless. Owen repeated, hardly daring to breathe. "Unless you asked me to stay," Julie whispered. The world seemed to stop. Owen stared at her, wondering if he'd misheard. "Julie, I know it's forward of me," she hurried on, "and perhaps entirely inappropriate. We've only known each other a few days. But I feel as though I've found something here that I never expected to find again." Owen reached for her hand, his heart pounding. "I feel it too," he admitted. "But your plans, your uncle in Oregon, can wait," Julie said, "or change entirely." "I wasn't running toward something in Oregon, Owen. I was running away from grief in Missouri. But here, with you and the boys, for the first time in years, I'm not running. I want to stay." Owen brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I want you to stay too," he said hoarsely. "The boys need you, I need you." Julie's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Are you certain? I don't want to replace Rebecca in your heart or in the boys' memories." "You couldn't," Owen said honestly. "Rebecca will always be a part of us. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for you two in a different way." This time, when their eyes met, Owen didn't hesitate. He leaned forward and kissed her, softly at first, then with growing passion as Julie responded, her lips warm and willing beneath his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not forever, not yet, just stay a while, let's see where this leads." Julie's smile was radiant. "Yes," she said simply. The next morning, Owen woke in the barn to the sound of Samuel and Michael's excited voices. He dressed quickly and hurried to the house, worried something was wrong. Instead, he found Julie teaching the boys how to make flapjacks, the three of them laughing together as batter splattered across the table. The scene stopped him in his tracks. This, he realized, was what his home had been missing, not just a woman's touch, but joy, laughter. The sense that they were a family, not just survivors. "Pa," Samuel spotted him. "Miss Julie says she's staying for a while. Is it true?" Owen met Julie's eyes across the room. "It's true," he confirmed. "If that's all right with you boys." "Yes," Samuel pumped his fist in the air. "Michael, did you hear? Miss Julie is staying." Michael, his face smeared with batter, nodded enthusiastically. Julie's stay. Over the next few weeks, their lives transformed. Julie wrote to her uncle in Oregon, explaining her delay and hinting at the reason. She settled into the ranch as if she'd always been there, turning the sparse cabin into a home with simple touches, wildflowers in a jar on the table, curtains sewn from fabric she had in her trunk, order brought to the chaos of the boys' belongings. More importantly, she brought healing. She encouraged Owen to talk about Rebecca with the boys, to share memories and stories so they would know their mother. She listened when Samuel had nightmares, held Michael when he had tantrums, and slowly, patiently helped them all learn to be a family again. And in the quiet moments when the boys were asleep, she and Owen grew closer. They shared their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Owen told her about his childhood in Pennsylvania, his journey west after the war, his years as a cowhand before settling on this land. Julie spoke of her life in Missouri, her love of teaching, her grief over losing first Thomas and then her parents. One evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching a spectacular sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Owen took Julie's hand. "I've been thinking," he said. Julie smiled. "A dangerous pastime. I know," Owen agreed with a chuckle, "but I've been thinking about us, about the future." Julie's smile faded, replaced by a more serious expression. "And what have you concluded?" Owen took a deep breath. "That I love you, Julie Bennett. That I want you to stay, not just for a while, but for good. That I want us to be a family, you, me, and the boys." Julie's eyes widened. "Owen, are you asking you to marry me?" "Yes, I am." Owen slid off the bench onto one knee, still holding her hand. "I know it hasn't been long, and if you need more time, I understand. But I don't need more time to know what I feel. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Tears spilled down Julie's cheeks. "Oh, Owen," she whispered. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." Owen surged forward, capturing her lips in a kiss that conveyed all the love and hope he felt. When they broke apart, both were breathless and smiling. "When?" Julie asked. "When should we soon?" Owen said firmly. "As soon as possible. The circuit preacher comes through Silver Creek in 2 weeks, unless that's too quick for you." Julie shook her head. "Not too quick at all, but what about the boys? Should we tell them now?" "Let's tell them together," Owen suggested. "In the morning." They needn't have worried about the boys' reaction. When they announced at breakfast that they were getting married, Samuel let out a whoop of delight that nearly shook the rafters. "Does that mean you'll be our ma now?" he asked Julie eagerly. Julie looked to Owen, who nodded encouragingly. "If you'd like me to be," she told Samuel. "I could never replace your real mother, but I would be honored to be a mother to you and Michael." Samuel considered this, then nodded. "I think Mama would like that. She always said family was the most important thing." Michael, picking up on the excitement, banged his spoon on the table. "Julie Mama," he declared, and that settled it. The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of preparations. Word spread quickly among the scattered neighbors, and to Owen's surprise, many expressed their intention to attend the wedding. Tom Billings' wife, Sarah, insisted on helping Julie prepare a proper wedding dress, altering one of her own finer dresses to fit Julie's smaller frame. The day before the wedding, Owen rode into Silver Creek to meet with the preacher and collect a few supplies. While there, he made a secret purchase at the general store, a simple gold band for Julie. As he rode home, the ring secure in his pocket, Owen marveled at how much his life had changed in just a few short weeks. The grief that had been his constant companion for 2 years hadn't disappeared, but it had softened, making room for new joy, new hope. The wedding day dawned clear and warm. The ceremony was to take place at the ranch, under the big cottonwood tree where Rebecca was buried. It had been Julie's suggestion, a way to honor the woman who had been the first love of Owen's life and the mother of his children. "She'll always be a part of this family," Julie had said. "I want to acknowledge that, not pretend she never existed." Owen, dressed in his best clothes, clean denims, a white shirt, and a vest, waited nervously under the cottonwood as neighbors gathered. Samuel stood beside him, fidgeting with the collar of his shirt while Mrs. Billings held Michael, who was unusually clean and tidy for once. Then Julie appeared in the doorway of the cabin, and everything else faded away. She wore a dress of deep blue, her hair loose around her shoulders with wildflowers woven through the auburn strands. She carried a small bouquet of prairie flowers, and her face glowed with happiness as she walked toward him. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Owen and Julie exchanged simple vows, promising to love and cherish each other for all their days. When Owen slipped the gold band onto Julie's finger, he saw tears shimmer in her eyes. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Parker." Owen kissed Julie tenderly, aware of their audience but unable to contain his joy. As they broke apart, Samuel tugged at Julie's dress. "Does this mean I call you Ma now?" he asked. Julie knelt down to his level. "You can call me whatever feels right to you, Samuel. Julie, Ma, or anything else." Samuel thought for a moment, then nodded decisively. "Ma," he said, testing the word. "I like it." The small gathering of neighbors celebrated with a feast to which everyone had contributed. There was music from Jim Harper's fiddle, dancing in the yard, and more laughter than the Parker Ranch had heard in years. As the sun began to set, guests departed with warm wishes and knowing smiles. The Billings had offered to take the boys for the night, an arrangement that made Owen both grateful and slightly embarrassed. When they were finally alone, Owen took Julie's hand and led her into the cabin, their home now, truly. "Mrs. Parker," he said, savoring the sound of it. Julie smiled up at him. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," Owen murmured, pulling her close. "So do I." That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Julie's head resting on Owen's chest, she traced patterns on his skin with her fingertips. "Are you happy?" she asked softly. Owen caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Happier than I ever thought I could be again," he answered truthfully. "Are you?" "Yes," Julie said simply. "This feels right, Owen, like I was always meant to find you and the boys, like my whole life was leading me here." "I believe it was," Owen said, kissing her forehead. "I believe some things are meant to be, even when they come after great loss." Julie snuggled closer. "I love you, Owen Parker." "And I love you, Julie Parker," he replied, the name still new and wonderful on his tongue. The summer passed in a golden haze of happiness. Julie settled fully into her role as wife and mother, bringing order and joy to the Parker household. She started a small vegetable garden, began teaching Samuel and Michael their letters and numbers each evening, and somehow managed to keep the ranch running smoothly even on the days when Owen had to ride far afield to check on cattle. In late August, as the first hints of autumn crept into the air, Julie approached Owen one evening as he sat on the porch, whittling a new toy for Michael. "I have something to tell you," she said, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. Owen set aside his knife and wood. "What is it?" Julie took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We're going to have a baby," she said softly. "Next spring." For a moment, Owen couldn't speak. A jumble of emotions washed over him: joy, fear, excitement, anxiety. The memory of Rebecca's death during childbirth rose unbidden, sending a chill through him. Julie, watching his face, squeezed his hand. "I know what you're thinking," she said gently. "But I'm strong, Owen, and we'll take every precaution. We'll ride to Silver Creek for the doctor when the time comes." Owen pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "You won't," Julie promised. "We're going to be fine, all of us." They told the boys the next day. Samuel's reaction was a mix of curiosity and excitement, while Michael seemed more confused than anything else. "A baby," he repeated, his small brow furrowed. "Like Mrs. Billings' baby." "Yes, like little Emma," Julie confirmed, "but our baby will live here with us." Michael considered this. "Will the baby like me?" Julie smiled, gathering him close. "The baby will love you because you'll be the best big brother ever." As summer turned to fall and fall to winter, Julie's body changed, her belly swelling with new life. Owen found himself both fascinated and terrified by the process. He hovered over her, insisting she rest, trying to do more around the house, despite her protests that she was perfectly capable. "Owen Parker, if you don't stop treating me like I'm made of glass, I swear I'll scream," Julie finally said one snowy December day after he'd tried to prevent her from carrying a basket of laundry. "I just want to help," Owen protested. Julie's expression softened. "I know you do, and I love you for it, but women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I'm healthy, the baby's healthy, and driving each other crazy won't help anyone." Owen reluctantly agreed to be less overprotective, though he still found himself watching her carefully, especially as winter deepened and the baby grew more active. Christmas that year was the most joyous they'd ever had. Julie had been secretly sewing gifts for the boys: a new shirt for Samuel, a stuffed horse for Michael, and Owen had carved a beautiful rocking chair for Julie, working on it in the barn during the long winter evenings. The new year brought heavy snows that isolated them from their neighbors for weeks at a time. But within the cabin, warmed by the fire and by their love for each other, the Parker family created their own world. In early March, just as the first signs of spring began to appear, Julie went into labor. True to his word, Owen had arranged for Mrs. Billings to come stay with the boys, and he bundled Julie into the wagon for the journey to Silver Creek, where the doctor waited. The trip was nerve-wracking, with Julie trying to hide her pain and Owen driving as carefully yet quickly as possible over the still muddy roads. They reached town just as Julie's contractions intensified. The next 12 hours were the longest of Owen's life. Banished from the room where Julie labored with the doctor and a local midwife, he paced the doctor's front parlor until he was sure he would wear a path in the floorboards. When he finally heard the cry of a newborn, Owen froze, his heart in his throat. Then the door opened and the midwife appeared, her face wreathed in smiles. "You have a daughter, Mr. Parker," she announced, "and your wife is asking for you." Owen stumbled into the room to find Julie propped up on pillows, tired but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up as he entered, her smile so full of love that it nearly brought him to his knees. "Come meet your daughter," she said softly. Owen approached the bed on shaky legs. Julie pulled back the blanket to reveal a tiny face, eyes closed, wisps of dark hair plastered to a perfect head. "She's beautiful," Owen whispered, reaching out a tentative finger to touch his daughter's cheek. "Just like her mother." "Would you like to hold her?" Julie asked, carefully, as if handling the most precious and fragile treasure in the world. Owen took his daughter into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, yet he felt the weight of her future, of all the love and hopes he already had for her. "What shall we name her?" Julie asked. Owen looked down at the tiny face. "Rebecca," he said, then glanced quickly at Julie. "If that's all right with you." Julie's eyes filled with tears. "It's perfect," she said. "Rebecca Julie Parker." 3 days later, they brought little Rebecca home to the ranch. Samuel and Michael crowded around, eager to see their new sister. "She's so small," Samuel said in wonder. "Baby," Michael declared, peering at the bundle in Julie's arms. "That's right," Julie said. "This is your sister, Rebecca." "Can I hold her?" Samuel asked. Julie nodded, showing him how to support the baby's head as she carefully transferred Rebecca to his arms. Samuel's face was a study in concentration and awe. "Hello, Rebecca," he said seriously. "I'm your big brother, Samuel, and that's Michael. We've been waiting for you." Owen watched his family, his complete, perfect family, and felt a sense of peace wash over him. The journey had been long and often painful, from the depths of grief to this moment of pure joy. But every step had led him here, to this home filled with love, to these children who were his greatest blessing, to Julie, who had saved them all with her patience and love. Later that night, after the boys were asleep and little Rebecca was settled in the cradle Owen had crafted for her, he and Julie stood together by the window, looking out at the Montana night. "Thank you," Owen said, his arm around Julie's waist. "For what?" she asked, leaning into him. "For stopping here when your wagon broke, for staying when you could have gone, for loving us all even when it wasn't easy." Julie turned in his arms, facing him. "Loving you has been the easiest thing I've ever done," she said, "and the most rewarding." Owen kissed her, pouring all his gratitude and love into the gesture. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "When you first arrived," he said softly, "I thought I knew what my life would be, just me and the boys, getting by day to day. I never imagined I could be this happy again." "Neither did I," Julie admitted. "I thought I was just passing through, on my way to a new life. I didn't realize I was already finding it." Outside, the stars shone down on the Parker Ranch, on the little cabin where a family slept peacefully, a father who had learned to love again, a mother who had found her true home, 2 boys who had regained the joy of childhood, and a baby girl who represented all their hopes for the future. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would be challenges ahead. But they would face them together, with patience and love, just as they had found each other in the first place, a cowboy trying to raise his sons alone, and a stranger who had stepped in and changed everything for the better.